Hello,
Hey,
everybody. How are you, Pat?
good. How's it going?
You know what? We're both in the same time zone. So, welcome, everybody. This is Starfleet Tactical. I, of course, am Chris Weave. This, of course, is Pat Doyle. We are both in the same time zone, although I guess we're not quite as far apart as you can be in the same time zone and still be in the same time zone. And we're certainly bonded together by the really, really cold weather, which is why I'm wearing a coat because it's kind of cold where I am.
See that space heater behind me? It's putting out
Yeah.
really nice heat.
Yeah, my space heater's in Dayton, and I'm not in Dayton. I'm in Chicago. So I'm actually at Arias Kaufman's brother's house.
Okay. All right.
And I invited Vic to come on the show. Vic occasionally shows up in the chat. I invited him to come on the show, and he's apparently camera shy. So he's in the next room probably listening to it.
All right.
So,
well, hey Vic, welcome. So
I should warn everybody. I think I'm having latency issues,
yes,
but luckily Pat is going to do all the work tonight. So it's not going to be about me. So,
yep, we'll be discussing my favorite topic, me. So here we go. All right. So hey everybody. So what I was going to talk about today is I was going to kind of go over, for anybody who maybe new, is going to go over the Balanced Terror episode just super fast, just touch on that real quick. And then we did a war game, a war game a couple weeks ago where I had some friends plan out a battle and all right, bumping my table, which is causing the world to shake a little bit. Anyways, had some friends so then I put together a PowerPoint for my friends where they had to be the Romulans and plan out a battle. And we linked it to the Balance of Terror episode. And there is a particular link. Actually, you know what? Is there a way? I have a link. Wait.
If you put it in the private chat, I'll put it up as a banner.
Okay. Because if I play that private link, then they will cut us off.
Yeah. But we can put it up as a banner and I'll send it out. I'll put it in the comments. I'll send it out in the comments.
I put it in the private chat. Here we go. So actually, with this link to YouTube, for just the first minute and a half of it, if everybody watches it, we'll all be on the same page. And it's a comment in this particular thing from Commander Hansen, who was our commander of Outpost 4, which was the outpost that we saw get obliterated by Mark Leonard and his merry band of Romulans aboard the Bird of Prey. So if you link on that and play it, just take a minute and do so, and then I'll get our PowerPoint. So now, do I have control of the screen? Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to click on the present button down in the middle. Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, somebody just pointed out something that I was going to mention and I totally forgot, which is, this is our 100th episode.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah. This is episode number 100.
Nice.
And in a perfect world where both of us had a lot more time, we would have put together some big extravaganza to celebrate getting to episode 100.
Undoubtedly, like maybe going to Atlanta and being on the bridge and doing it from there.
Yeah. And the chances of that happening were pretty much zero. So we're not making a big deal about it being 100, other than I put an exclamation point in the banner for today. But this is our 100th episode. We're still going strong. So keep coming back, everybody. All right. So
everybody hopefully has had at least a chance to listen to that. And that kind of brings you up to speed on what we're doing. Let's see. So I am sharing that screen. Okay. So a drinking game. Outstanding. Yes. Every time we say Romulan, take a shot. Okay. So here's what I'm just going to do a very quick, as fast as I can do it, a recap.
Pat,
Yes.
do you see on your screen where it says it's got a little window at the bottom that says click on hide. There we go.
All right. That little banner really bugs you, doesn't it? Okay.
Yes. I'll just,
Outstanding. Okay. So we had an episode called Balance Terrors, the 14th episode of Star Trek, very early in the series and everything. So, Star Trek wasn't really Star Trek yet, right? I mean, they were still hashing things out and figuring things out. So, but it's still to this day one of my favorite episodes. And I got to say, on Strange New Worlds, when they revisited that particular battle with Captain Pike, I loved it. So I thought that was most excellent. Sorry, my camera just leaned down here a little bit. Okay. So anyways, Balance of Terror. Okay. So yada, 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 lots of 700 hours of Star Trek, could be any number of little mistakes. There could be a throwaway line from any episode that negates anything anybody else says or any bit of analysis. So that can happen. Someone's asking, we would be dead if we're all taking shots. Yeah. As far as the link, the link is still up there. It's TJ. The link is from the Axanar presenter. It's from Lissa, and it's at 9:03 p.m. So if you just scroll up a little bit, you'll see the link. Anyways, so that's just my my little disclaimer. Okay, so we are going to talk. So yeah, we talked about that. There were a couple little issues in the show, right? They used proximity phaser blasts, which my opinion is kind of that it was more likely to be proximity blast photon torpedoes because they used the same special effect that was later used for photon torpedoes. We didn't hear anything about photon torpedoes during this episode. So it's possible that the photon torpedoes weren't going to arrive until Tuesday and they were patrolling the border, which that does happen in Star Trek. So as a matter of fact, that line could have been a throwback to Balance of Terror. I mean, it's hard to tell. Anyways, so in Star Trek, Enterprise has warp capability. We have to assume that the Romulans actually did too. Otherwise, this was a 100-year mission for them. So this is basically what the border looks like. And I have this. Okay. So if you watched the video there that came up on YouTube, the bird of prey came along here. It struck Outpost 2, Outpost 3, and in the meantime, Enterprise is headed towards Outpost 4, and he gets a hold of Commander Hansen aboard Outpost 4. And Commander Hansen says Outpost 2, 3, and 8 have been destroyed. So it seems unlikely to me that that one just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What that would imply is that the bird of prey came here, blew up Outpost 2, Outpost 3, went up to Outpost 8, came back to Outpost 4. Or it started here at Outpost 8, blew up Outpost 8, drove all the way down to 2 and 3, whipped a Yui, and came back to 4. Romulans are trying to be deceptive and stuff like that. I mean, those are certainly all possibilities. My take is that Mark Leonard and his merry band came across the border, blew up Outpost 2, 3, attacked 4. That's where Enterprise intercepted them, chased them towards the edge of the border, and they had their battle. So if we accept that assumption, the question becomes who destroyed Outpost 8? So probably this could have been part of a larger operation. So if this was a larger operation, there's more than one ship attacking, right? So what the war game that we played out, we changed some assumptions in Balance of Terror. One of the assumptions that Mark Leonard states is he is at least under the impression he's out there probing and testing the weaknesses of the Federation, and he's looking for weakness. And when they come back with proof of the Earthers' weakness, that there's going to be a war. And he's not entirely thrilled about this. He's kind of tired. He's probably close to retirement and wants to be done. Anyhow, so it is possible that the assumption that we make is that in our little battle was that Mark Leonard was lied to, and that he was the diversionary attack for what was going to be part of the primary assault. And that primary assault was going to happen at Outpost 8, where the Romulans were going to launch an operation to try to either capture or destroy Outpost 8 and use that as a base from which to attack into a couple star systems here on the other side of the Federation border. And they were going to launch the war from there, with Mark Leonard's attack being the earlier diversionary attack intended to draw any patrolling ships, like, say, the Enterprise and the Farragut, and lure them into battle. And that way, that leaves a little bit of time. And it's always good to do a little deception in warfare, right? I mean, you don't want everybody to be able to identify exactly what you're doing and what your goals are and what you're planning. You want to throw out some misinformation and all that kind of stuff. So that's the overview of what we're talking about here. We had Enterprise. They came, they intercepted, they sized up each other. One of the questions we asked, what were the goals of the Romulan? Was there an invasion force ready to attack? Was this just a scouting mission, or were there other ships involved? So we're taking the assumption that, yes, there were other ships involved, and the Romulans were planning a big attack. And from what we see of the movie, what was it? Quality of Mercy, the end of Strange New Worlds in their season finale, there clearly was a Romulan fleet near the border there. So it's entirely possible that there was more going on. Okay. So they have the attack. Outpost 4 gets attacked. All I can say is he had a dull job right up until the time he got killed. Just sitting on that border. There's no trade, there's no diplomacy, there's nothing for 100 years. In my mind, it's probably a little like being a security guard, right? Hopefully there's nothing going on, and if there is, it's going to get interesting real quick. And anyways, Outpost 4 gets attacked. Obviously there are more outposts, and Mark Leonard decloaks, launches a plasma torpedo, and actually it took 2 plasma torpedoes. Now, the other thing is Commander Hansen mentions that he was alerted. And so that's one of the other little strings of the battle that we did, is because of the outcome of that battle at Outpost 8, that's who alerted Commander Hansen. So, because he talks about he's attacked, he had his shields up at full strength, they were ready for the attack, and his base was badly damaged and demolished, despite having full shields. And then the second attack knocked out the base. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, and didn't he say, how deep did he say that base was?
Miles deep in an iron asteroid, basically.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't ever remember that line. Sort of shocked me when I heard it, because I just didn't remember it from.
So clearly just straight raw iron, not that useful of an armor.
Well, yeah,
against these kind of weapons.
But there's miles of it. And to be honest, I don't know how shockwaves might get transmitted through miles of armor or miles of iron. But it's enveloping plasma energy that pretty much pulverized the base based off of Spock's briefing. So, since we saw it happen on TV, it must be how it happened. A mile deep. Yep, that's right. Thanks, right? So, anyways, the point is they have the battle. Enterprise chases down Mark Leonard's ship, and they have a battle, and it gets destroyed. So, let's see here.
Yeah, so the first attack knocked out its shields, wrecks the outpost, kills all of its phaser crews and everything like that. Romulan cloaks. While the Romulan ship was cloaked, there was no jamming, so he could communicate. Commander Hansen could communicate with Enterprise. So, anyways, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. Just kind of go over the basics of what happened in that battle. Okay, so now we go back to Outpost 8. We called our scenario Unbalanced Terror. Again, what we had was an assault on Outpost 8. And what I did is I made a PowerPoint presentation for my two friends, and they had to choose what their objective was going to be here at Outpost 8, and they had to choose their forces. So we'll go through and we'll kind of step through the planning process a little bit that they did. So Outpost 8. So there was going to be, so the operation would be a two-pronged strike initially. There's the main objective, which is Earth Outpost 8, and then a diversionary attack starting at Outpost 2. So this was Commander Leonard, or we never know the name of the Romulan commander, so I'll just call him Commander Leonard. Commander Leonard was going to start here at Outpost 2 and make his attack. So there is a book by Diane Duane. There were some old Star Trek novels, and I have it in the previous PowerPoint. But I believe they called the ship the Vas Hotham, and that was his ship. So he made the initial assault to. He was going to make the initial assault to draw an enemy reaction. Destroy Outpost 2, destroy Outpost 3, destroy Outpost 4, then come back across the border. The heavy cruiser Enterprise is on the other side of the border on patrol. It's a heavy, it's a heavy cruiser, Constitution class, upgraded. Since the ship was launched in 2245 and this is 2266, the Enterprise isn't a spring chicken, so it's been upgraded a few times throughout its lifespan. By this point, Kirk is very new to command, so they probably don't know a whole lot about Kirk yet, and he's not the legendary Captain Kirk yet. So he probably hasn't done anything truly notable to get their attention at this point. So Outpost 8 is the real objective of this assault. Okay. So Earth Outpost 8. The units around Outpost 8 come in three groups. There are three groups currently around Outpost 8. First, there's actually Outpost 8 itself, which can be a supply base. There's what the Romulans believe are a landing. Actually, let me go back for a second here. I may have missed. Okay, never mind. Okay. There is what the Romulans believe to be a landing force, and then there is a strike force at Outpost 8. So the way I sold this to them, and of course, this briefing to my friends is also a lie, right? This is the Tal Shiar line because they compartmentalize everything and everything's super secret. So what they're being told is, hey, there's a base, which is Outpost 8. There's a group of freighters, troop transports disguised as freighters in orbit around the base. And there is a strike force there. So we've got Outpost 8. That's the focal point of the operation. It is going to be providing command and control and will be acting as a supply base for a planned Federation strike into Romulan territory. The base had recently received upgraded sensors and subspace relays, along with the arrival of some high-ranking officers. The landing force, 6 Antares-class freighters converted as troop carriers with supplies for sustained operations. And then the strike force that is currently at Outpost 8 is the USS Lexington under Commodore Wesley. You may remember him from the Ultimate Computer. USS Pegasus, a Hermes 2 class scout, and the USS Saleya, a Surya 2 class frigate. This battle group is the command, essentially the command group for a larger force of ships that are expected to arrive in 4 days. And basically, this is the Romulans. We currently possess greater forces in the area, must attack now before the enemy gathers its invasion force. So the Romulans, being ever suspicious people, they're getting ready to attack this outpost. And basically they had three ultimate plans that they had to choose from for their attack on the base, so that the person defending the base, me, I wouldn't know exactly what their objective was as we did this. So their first plan, their first possibility was to capture and hold the base. And that was basically going to be the hardest one. So we were going to use the Romulan ships that we saw in one of the episodes of Enterprise, that old bird of prey. So we have those. We were using those miniatures converted as some troop transports, and they could have a couple of those if he chose Plan 1, which was to capture and hold the base at Outpost 8. They could have 2 destroyers converted to carry Tal Shiar strike teams to overwhelm and secure the base. This is the most difficult option, but carried the greatest reward and glory for the Praetor. The other plan, the second plan that they could choose from, was to just destroy the base and destroy the scout. Now, the scouts, they're basically strategic assets. The scouts have really long-range sensors. They can look deep into Romulan territory, and it would really hurt the Federation to lose that scout ship. And so this was option 2 that they could choose from. And then their third option was destroy the base and destroy the landing force, which would take away all the troops, all the offensive capability, and their ability to sustain any operations in Romulan territory. So these were the 3 choices. So you can perhaps think about which one you'd be more interested in choosing, but that was the 3 options that they had. So basically, the PV is point value that you see here. So we have a balancing system in the game, and so we wanted to make the battle kind of at least somewhat interesting and somewhat balanced, and how we would do it. So they had 77 points with which to balance or to build their force. So if you remember from the Enterprise incident, there were the Klingon ships that were converted or purchased by the Romulans with plasma torpedoes and stuff like that. So they could have up to 2 of those ships, and they would be 25 points each. There would be the essentially the birds of prey, the cruisers that we saw. They could have up to 2 of those, and those are 15 points each. And then the smaller destroyers, basically the older ship that we saw from the TV show Enterprise, there were 3 variations of those old destroyers. They could have 3, configured as combat ships as destroyers. They could have up to one of them as a scout ship, and these scout ships basically can provide jamming and targeting capability. Help they act as force multipliers basically in combat. Or if they wanted to capture the base, they could bring these troop transports. So those were their forces that they chose to bring. What they ended up bringing was 2 birds of prey, a group of 3 destroyers, and 1 of the troop transports. And so the starting conditions was that we would be at yellow alert, because we've heard things, or the Federation has heard things over their net, that something's going on with Outpost 2. So they at least went to yellow alert, right?
Pat?
Yeah.
Can you go back for a second?
Sure.
You said 2 birds of prey.
2 birds of prey. Yep.
And how many destroyers?
3.
3 destroyers is 39, 59, 64, 71 points.
I think it came out to.
No.
There may have been a point value.
You said two birds of prey and 3 destroyers.
Yep.
So that's 39
69.
plus. No, 39. 2 destroyers and 2 birds of prey and 3 destroyers. So that's 3 destroyers is 39, and 2 birds of prey is 50, and 50 plus 39.
Nope. Two birds of prey is 30.
Oh. I was looking. I'm sorry. I thought the birds of prey were the top ones. Okay. Never mind.
So that came out to 69 points. And then they brought 1 troop transport, which was worth 7 points. And so that came out to 76 points right there.
Okay. Helps.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah. I was a brain fart. Sorry.
No problem. So if you look at my forces here, I have the point value of the outpost was 18. Lexington was 28. It was a command ship with a Commodore aboard. Then Pegasus for 18 and Saleya for 7. So
what's the difference between an Axanar class and a Constitution?
The Axanar class is basically it's like a Block 3 version of the Mod 1 Mark 1 Constitution class.
Okay, so externally it looks the same. Hence, when they did that composite shot in the Ultimate Computer, they can just use the same model.
Exactly. It's essentially a Constitution class. It's just further down the lineage. So you could think of it as an Axanar upgrade.
Yeah, it's a subclass.
Subclass, exactly.
Okay, roger that.
Let's see here. 18 and 28, 16, 5, 1, 2, 16. So if you total my points here, it's 71 points. So it's close to even, but the Romulans would have the advantage of surprise as well for them. So let's see here. So yeah, we would at least start at yellow alert, but we're just sitting there around the base. And then the Romulans enter the battle cloaked, because remember, at this point, the Federation player or the Federation doesn't even know that the Romulans have cloaking devices, right? So this is all a complete surprise. At best, their sensors would probably tell them, hey, there's something weird out here, But anyways, the point is the Romulans would have the advantage of surprise. So yeah, this is the one with all the troops on board. So this is the model. This is basically the model you see, and we saw it on the TV show Enterprise. This is the destroyer version. Each one of these destroyers carry 2 plasma torpedoes. This is the Scout, which they did not bring. And then the good old bird of prey carries the great big plasma torpedo up front, and it can launch those. And then this would be a version of which they did not bring this version, but this would be the Klingon Romulan, the D7 conversion to a Romulan ship. There's Outpost 8. And then we got the Axanar class. If you look in the book, Ships of the Starfleet, these stats, it carries the AWOLT photon torpedo, RIN 6 phasers, RSM 12 phasers. And so this is essentially the Axanar version of it. So if you get out your old Ships of the Starfleet, you'll notice that this ship matches what you see in that book. And then a Hermes class Scout, which we had, which is basically the Saladin, a Scout version of the Saladin. Instead of photon torpedoes, it carries great big sensors and stuff. And then the little Surya frigate, which is okay as an escort. Otherwise, it's not exactly a heavy combat vessel. And then those would be the freighters. So anyways, that's essentially the briefing that we had. So how are we doing? 9:30. Okay, not a problem. So, all right, let's take this over here. Put that, okay. So, okay, so we can't make this any bigger, can we? Oh, maybe we can. How's that? That's much better. Okay, so so this is really Outpost 8 right here, but the rock that Chandler built the model on was just a little too big for the play area that we had. So this is the zoomed in picture of Outpost 8 on the asteroid. And then as we see here, we have Outpost 8. This is what we use for Outpost 8. We've got the freighters here in orbit. And then we've got the Lexington under Commodore Wesley. The Scout is right here. And the Surya class frigates right here. We're just lazily orbiting the outpost. So, so at this point, we don't know that, we've gone to yellow alert because, hey, there's some training value and, having a battle stations drilled, basically. Nobody actually believes after 100 years that there's going to be any kind of action on the border, right? So, but the Romulans get into position and they essentially decloak surrounding the Fed ships. So the 3 destroyers are over here and they're approaching the base, not very far away. And then, of course, the 2 birds of prey are out here and they are gunning straight for the heavy cruiser. And so it appears that their plan was have these guys take out the heavy cruiser, basically the center of gravity of my force, and strike at the base here. Now, the one piece of artificial piece of information that I had is I knew the point value structure of, how they were going to build their force. So once, and I even wrote down a little note at the very beginning of the battle, once they decloaked and set up, and I jotted down a quick paragraph and I did the math, and they basically had used up 69 of their points, which means they had 8 points left. The only thing they could buy was a transport. So based off of that, what I assumed is that their goal was to take the base. And so I operated from the assumption that they paid for a transport and there was still another transport cloaked out there that I didn't know about. And so I assessed that they were going after the base to take it over and to capture it. And so from that bit of knowledge and analysis kind of guided all of my decisions from there. And since I wrote the scenario, I also knew the choices of objectives that they had. Now, everything could have been a deception, right? And maybe they just bought the extra ship just to have it out there. So, but I made the assessment and I operated based off of that assessment. And I do have this full PDF, by the way, posted somewhere, and I'll give everybody the link to it if you're interested in reading the actual the whole thing in detail. But so the Romulans decloak and we begin the game essentially. On phase 2, the Romulans phase 1, the Romulans move, and my ships were just cruising along basically at really slow speed. You can see here that the 3 destroyers, they're gunning straight for the base, and the 2 birds of prey continue straight towards the Lexington. So if you'll notice here that I kind of aggressively take my scout and have it making a hard turn to bring some phasers to bear, because I assumed that very soon they're going to start shooting at me. So I wanted to have some guns to bear on these things. And then I have the frigate sort of just acting as wingmen to the heavy cruiser here. And then, so this is another close-up picture of the Surya here and the three destroyers coming after the base. He entirely ignores the freighters, so I kind of assumed that, once again, that kind of went on to confirm my hypothesis. And then right here we see basically the 3 destroyers. They launch 6 plasma torpedoes at the base, and we saw what 2 of them did to it in the TV show. So I pretty much assumed at this point. So you can assume that right here, this this miniature represents all 3 of the destroyers, and each of them launched 2 plasma torpedoes. I just didn't have enough of these things. So there's 6 plasma torpedoes on its way for the base. And then this oh, you got it. Good. Outstanding. It's like somebody has an internet connection. So this this Romulan bird of prey, or this miniature represents both birds of prey, and these are the 2 plasma torpedoes, and they're launched directly at the Lexington. So my assessment basically was that, okay, maybe I was wrong. He's going to try to destroy the base because he launched a lot of weaponry at the base. So I assumed it was going to get destroyed. And so the URL is horrendous. Look in the chat. So anyways, I assessed that the outpost was going to be entirely destroyed. And so what I did is I used the phasers from the base to help defend the Lexington and to help shoot down the incoming plasma torpedoes on the Lexington. So that's what we did there. Meanwhile, the destroyer was making right-hand turns, and the cruiser was just going slow because I couldn't go fast enough to outrun anything anyways. So the plasma torpedoes, they fly in, they impact the Lexington, and they really took down the shields pretty bad. However, all the ships, including the base, fired at the plasma torpedoes, and we were actually able to dissipate one of the plasma torpedoes. So the Lexington was only hit by 1 plasma torpedo. So it survived. It just took a little bit of damage. Then the Romulans flew by, and they're going at really high speed, right? This is, if we're doing fighter lingo, going really slow with the heavy cruiser here, and here come the Romulans screaming on past. Okay, so I didn't have to hit the brakes; they still flew right by. So meanwhile, the base is pretty much destroyed over here, and the Romulans, as they came up alongside, fired their secondary disruptors and all that kind of stuff, and knocked down the shield and did a little more damage to my heavy cruiser. So things are looking pretty grim at this point. What was it? All the shields basically were down to 30% on the Lexington. So, and the starboard shield had collapsed, and the Romulans poured some fire into there. So, and the other thing is we ended up losing our starboard torpedo tube as well, and some of the phasers. So it really wasn't looking that great. Even the shield generators were damaged. So wasn't looking too good for Lexington. So then after the next move, the 3 Romulan destroyers come right up behind my frigate, and the Romulans essentially overshot. And so at this point, though, I had used up the Lexington had used up all of its phasers, basically, shooting down the plasma torpedoes. But my photon torpedoes were armed. The photon torpedoes on the frigate were armed. Things were looking okay. And the advantage I had or that the Federation had, is that the Romulans had already fired all of their plasma torpedoes. So I was really tempted to take a shot here and try to get a little bit of payback. But what I realized is that if I stuck around a little bit longer and followed them until the torpedoes were fully ready, I kind of figured that would give them time to recharge their weapons. My shields were low, and I would lose my entire force. So I decided actually for the better part of valor. And since the base, which I was going to try to protect, was already obliterated, and there wasn't really anything I was going to be able to do to save these freighters here, it really wasn't looking too good. So the Lexington, basically, since the Lexington was going really slow, it did a hard left turn while the Romulans continued on at high speed. And the frigate, it did a hard right turn as well, trying to get away. The Romulan commander, however, ended up predicting the move and stayed with the frigate. And but the Romulans had pretty much fired all their weaponry into the base here, so they didn't have a whole lot left to shoot into the frigate. So it just took a little bit of light damage. And you can see I had to remove the miniature and use a little counter here for the Lexington to represent the Lexington. So basically we did a hard left turn and tried to get away. And I figured that would buy me some time to charge up the warp drive and escape while the Romulans were busy turning around and maybe taking pot shots. And meanwhile, my scout, it's basically an EA-6B. It can just jam the area. And that's what it was doing, which was just degrading the Romulans' weapons fire by a little bit, and every little bit helped. So, and basically at that point, we were able to get away, get a little more distance and engage the warp drive just as the Romulans were turning around and getting ready to launch their next round of plasma torpedoes. So basically the Federation made good their escape. It's not a story of pulling your fat out of the fire and still managing a victory. I was just happy to get my ships away. And, the quote, "flyer apart" applies because we were putting everything into going as fast as we can past the red line with the ships. So the aftermath of this, the funny thing is the cool thing is that this actually fell in line within the historical events of Balance of Terror. The Federation task force successfully retreated, sounded the alarm, and it's their message that got to Commander Hansen in time for at least him to raise his shields when he saw the Romulans, and he knew to expect trouble. Of course, he was still no match for the Romulan ship, but it at least gave him a fighting chance. And then Commander Hansen's message to Enterprise gave Kirk some valuable information, which allowed him to destroy the bird of prey. So the Romulan players' chosen objective was to capture the base, essentially long enough to capture the crew, gather intelligence on Starfleet dispositions along the border. But unfortunately, the Romulans' initial strike of 6 torpedoes proved so aggressive that it destroyed the base. And the fact that, as it turned out, I assumed they were doomed anyways, so I chose not to use the base's weapons to try to protect the base. I used the base's weapons to protect Lexington. And it turns out that little extra, that lack of defense on the base's part has probably contributed to its getting destroyed. So in a certain way, you could look at it as they committed suicide by not defending themselves. But even still, wouldn't have been able to defend the base in well. Another round of fire would have destroyed the base.
Go
ahead.
Let me put another spin on that, though.
Okay.
The Federation hadn't encountered plasma torpedoes before, right?
Right. Okay,
so they might, if that base looks like the other base where they've got shields and they're buried a mile deep, they might just think that, okay, we're just going to ride this out because we're the really, really armored target. Mm-hmm. And so we should be fine.
Yeah. And it's probably not a
it's an incorrect assumption, but it's not a stupid one.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's a reasonable assessment given you have, those commanders they still had to make decisions, and they had a limited amount of time and a limited amount of information with which to make the decisions, but it doesn't alleviate the responsibility of making a decision. And even if you just sit there dumbfounded throughout the thing, you've still made the decision to sit there and look dumbfounded. So,
for what it's worth, I couldn't get that link to work, and everybody's saying that link 404. So,
oh really? All right, I'll find it and I'll get a new link here in just a second. So the base was destroyed, though it might have survived. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding my cursor. There it is. Okay. Now, from the TV episode, we believed that the Romulan commander was on a scouting mission to test the Earthers' defenses. But what if he was lied to and his attack was just a diversion for what was going to be the larger attack starting with Outpost 8? And that was going to be a beachhead into Federation territory. So my assessment here my assumption is that in the end, the Romulan High Command chose not to make the assault on the Federation on this day for several reasons. First, the diversionary attack was stopped by the aggressive defense of Captain Kirk. Second, Outpost 8, which by their plan needed to be captured, and that they could use it for information. It could be a supply base, all that sort of stuff. They were unable to capture it. And so the facilities on the base would not be available. And the opportunity to gather intel on Federation strength and disposition was lost. And then finally, the damaged Starfleet task force, which included basically the sector command ship, which was Commodore Wesley on the Lexington, and its strategically valuable scout, they escaped and were able to regroup with other forces. So the Romulans... So Starfleet basically proved that they were strong enough strong and competent, and they were willing to fight, and that's what kept peace on that day in 2266. Let's see here. So, yep. So this is a recap of that, and then at one point, a massive space monster did arrive. It could have been a first one, and then it quickly departed, took no interest in the affairs of lesser species. So, right.
Yeah, I've often said that when I get around to buying a place, I want to have a place where I can where my living quarters, where the cat and I live, or the cats and I live, are sort of separate from the gaming quarters, because some people in all war games are allergic to cats.
Yes. All right, so I've got the link here. So basically, it's www.mariner.games/store, and right here is the battle report. You just click on that and download it. Doesn't cost anything, and you can see what you think if you want to read it. Let's see here, and I'll put in the private chat. There we go. So there's the link in the private chat. If you guys can convert that to something that everybody can see, and that's pretty much it. And that's all I got.
Let me put it up on a banner real quick.
Oh, there you go. All right.
That works.
I imagine the Romulan commander had an uncomfortable conversation. I like Stephen Ross's comment. I imagine the Romulan commander had an uncomfortable conversation with the Tal Shiar after the battle.
Okay, so Bob asked the question, where's the private chat? So the private chat is private. The private chat is a specific channel that we have, those of us that are logged into StreamYard, which is the software we use to produce the show. And it allows Lissa and Pat and I to send messages back and forth to each other to allow us to coordinate stuff, etc. So basically that was him telling Lissa and I to go look in our private channel to then do what we were going to do with it. So you don't have access to the private chat.
All right.
Yeah, somebody said Balance of Terror is definitely among the very best episodes of the original series. A lot of people have said something along those lines. I would agree with that as well. It's really pretty nifty. Even with things like the phaser proximity blasts and a few other things like that. So,
what did everybody think of the season finale of Strange New Worlds? I personally really enjoyed it.
I haven't seen any episodes of Strange New World since we talked about it.
Okay. Well, have you seen all 10, or you've only seen what, a couple of them?
The last one I saw was the one where Jim Kirk shows up.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. Quality of Mercy.
Oh, okay.
It's the one where they redid Balance of Terror, only in a different timeline.
Yeah, and so Pike and Kirk never met in the regular timeline, right?
Yeah, they did. Kirk mentions in Menagerie that they had, I guess, met briefly somewhere along the way. After he took command or something like that. And you're at least going to meet for the change of command in most cases.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, it's just I would have thought that Starfleet would be small enough and that there would have been more of it. The thing is that what I remember about Balance of Terror, and I need to go back and rewatch it. I'm sorry, not Balance of Terror, but the Menagerie. What I remember about that episode is that Kirk spends a lot of time deferring to Spock and Spock's opinion on Pike, and I got it because they served together for a long time. But as I remember it, Kirk sort of talks as if he had never really met Pike.
Okay.
I must be misremembering that.
Yeah, no, in Menagerie they talk about having so if you don't want to enter your email in there, that's fine, but just make up an email address. Just do something@something.com.
Where does it send it if you do that? I mean, does it send a link?
Okay. So my apologies. I did not realize it was for a free download. It was going to run you through all this stuff.
So it sounds like what you need to do is just go and upload it to a different part of your site so that people can just stick it in the blog.
So I did actually, but the blog software doesn't allow the pictures. However,
no, stick a link to the PDF in the blog.
How would you link? Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah, I might be. I'll have to experiment with it.
We'll figure it out. And in all honesty, this is not part of our plan to get you to go to the Mariner Games website.
It is not. It was just a place I had hung it that I thought would be easy.
The plan is not to get you to go to the Mariner Games website every day for the next. Pat will figure it out.
So, but I can certainly. I don't know if there's any other place we can hang it, but.
Yeah, here's an interesting comment. Star Trek has always played fast and loose with their time distance calculations.
Yeah. Yeah, it dissipates over time, and so sort of the retcon is right, because in the original series they would fight at warp speeds, and so weapon fire happened at warp speed and torpedoes and all that kind of stuff. And transitioning from sublight to warp speed wasn't really wasn't really an issue with regard to firing weapons and stuff like that. So when they went to warp, they accelerated to warp. That plasma torpedo kept chasing them into warp. So, so yes, you're not wrong about the fast and loose thing. One of the retcons I've seen on YouTube for that was that the plasma torpedo was so close it was caught in, you know, in the warp bubble or something of the Enterprise, or the warp wake or something, and they basically dragged it into warp with them or something like that. So you can judge for yourself what you think of those different explanations. But then when we get to next generation, they made a distinction between warp combat and which is basically launching photon torpedoes, but most of the combat takes place at sublight speeds. Presumably there is a reason that at sublight, or there is a reason that you don't want to be in combat at warp. And it could be that, you know, perhaps damage to your ship could cause problems that causes your ship to spin out of control at warp or something like that. Or maybe shields don't work as well. Who knows? But we see them
I think it's just harder to do successfully.
Yeah. Well, because what we see them consistently doing is dropping to sublight anytime they might be about to engage in combat, 90% of the time. So, all right. That's about all I've got. Unless there's anything else.
I've got just one last question for you.
Sure.
What does your employer think about this subject?
My employer has zero opinion whatsoever, but I certainly don't speak for them. Should they gain an opinion on Balance of Terror, I do not speak for them. So,
what a coincidence! None
of my employers.
I don't speak for my employer, and I don't speak for your employer either.
Right. Exactly. Hey, I have a little bit of trivia. Anybody seen the new Top Gun Maverick movie? Can anybody identify the Trekkie in that movie? I'll just roll that grenade in and see if you can find the Trekkie in the movie.
Interesting.
So, that's about all I've got. But anyways, that's an assessment on my part. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Okay, well that's worth looking at. So let's see. Are you going to be here next week?
Unlikely.
Okay. Unlikely. All right. So February is going to be crazy. Pat's unlikely to be here next week. I should be. But then I'm going to be doing a bunch of traveling. And there's the possibility that one of these shows I will do from Brian Haven's house in Norfolk. So the week after next, I'm not going to be available. So no show a week after next. The week after that, I think I'm going to be doing a show from Norfolk. And so Pat, hopefully you're around, but if you're not, hopefully. But we'll figure things out. I know that TJ and Rob have the next installment in the Battlestar Galactica assessment is ready, and the one after that they're working on putting the finishing touches on, etc. So we got 2 more of those in the can. And I want to say that there was one other one that I had that's potentially in the can, and I'm trying to remember what it is. So I'm, next week I'll have more of a schedule as to exactly what's going on, because I'll be back in Dayton tomorrow, and I won't spend all my time in the car. So, but I think that's about everything I've got.
All right.
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's been around for, we've done 100 episodes. We've been doing this for a while. And so thank you to everybody who gives us their time on Saturday night. I really appreciate it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like doing this, is because I know that there's a lot of people that are going to be there, so thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. And I hope everybody has a great week.
All right. So thank you very much, everybody.
Take care. See ya.